Hi, my guest today is Rachel Ehring, who is an energy trainer and the developer of TARC, TARC, which is Tap Around the Clock. So, welcome, Rachel.
Hi, Tanya. Nice to be here with you.
Oh, yes, lovely to be here with you now, especially looking forward to this talk as well. I know we're going to talk about ADHD, which is really a growing problem around the world. I think more and more people are finding they've got those particular symptoms. So, with that being said, I'll pull it right back a little bit. How did you get into energy therapies, Rachel? What led you down this path?
Oh gosh, yeah. God, it feels like such a long time ago now. I suppose it was the breakdown of my marriage, which led me when you go into that crisis mode of three children under six, and you're suddenly on your own. I'd left London, I'd left TV, the world of TV that I used to work in, and my youngest was only one. So I'd not yet got back into work. We were discussing what I was going to be doing next. We'd moved from London to come back up to Manchester, and my world sort of fell apart completely. And as I struggled to bring up three boys under the age of six, I realised there was nothing I could do that would help them unless I got information from elsewhere, if I got help from elsewhere. And it seemed to be more than what other people could give me, more capacity than they could give, because everyone else had got issues in their own lives. So I found myself going to church,
Mhm.
the boys to church. And as we sang the hymns, I found myself unable to voice, and I love singing, because the words would catch in my throat and the tears would literally just stream down my face, because the resonance of some of the hymns, it just felt so powerful. And there was just this release of emotions that was coming out. So I went to church for quite a while, and ended up going to Bible studies when the boys started to play football and started to ask a lot of questions. And found that there was a little bit of resistance to some of the questions that I was asking. So I had to go on my own pilgrimage from there on in as to find those answers, which took me into the realms of Reiki. So I found a local Reiki master and became attuned to Reiki, which answered so many of my questions and really helped my own beginning of my own healing journey, into to such an extent that by this point I'd gone back to work at Granada TV. I was very happy there. Things were progressing. We'd been made redundant, so I'd come back up to Manchester. We'd been made redundant from the drama department at ITV, and then I'd found myself in a job that I really was struggling, really was struggling with. And within a week of doing my Reiki 1, I left. I just walked out of the job. I was like, oh, right, okay, yeah, with no fear. And I think that was like, gosh, I can just walk out here and I know this is going to be okay.
Oh, pull that back a little bit. So, your original job at in the TV industry, what was your original job?
Well, I started off in what was called the program planning department at Granada TV back in 1989. I was 19,
Mhm.
and I was involved in the scheduling, in the very junior level of scheduling the programs for Granada TV. And the person that I worked with was what was called the controller of that, and he looked after the whole of the ITV spectrum. So we were sort of the hub of that. And that led me to finding out all about how things were scheduled in the departments and across the whole spectrum of ITV. We work very closely with the commercial department, so they put the commercials into in
Mhm.
between all the programs and things, and then all the promotions and things. And then I was very much in contact with a lot of the production teams, because they had to give us the information of what was going out. And then I ended up in the entertainment department. So I worked on things like You've Been Framed, Stars in Their Eyes, Cluedo, Busman's Holiday. I mean, we're going back a long time, so some people have never even heard of half of this stuff. But I worked with Richard and Judy and those type of people, and I had a ball. So I grew up in the 20s, at Manchester, Granada TV, and had an absolute ball. It really was fantastic. Zoe Ball was actually the runner on the very first production that I worked on. I was the production secretary and she was the runner. So a lot of the people that I've worked with, they've really progressed and gone on to do wonderful, wonderful things within the TV realms. Russell T Davis, who written,
Doctor Who.
So, I've been privileged to work with really inspirational, wonderfully magic people.
So, and then, as you say, your life took a very different direction. And I like the imploding, I think, and the interesting thing about that is often at those points in time, we often really look at what's happening in our lives, don't we? And as you say, you sought answers. And I know you quite well, and I know you are a very curious person. You really are quite a in-depth researcher. So what led you to, I know one of your first therapies, and I wouldn't say it's your first because obviously Reiki is that first one, I think.
Yeah, Reiki was the very first thing I sort of delved into.
Yeah. What led you to EFT, because emotional freedom technique, because I know you are trained in that.
Well, again, because, once you start on the energy journey, you just can't get enough information, can you? It sends you on this really beautiful discovery of self, really. And when you sort of realize that you are really quite interesting and you are not that worthless person that has been left with the kids and is struggling to pick herself up out of the gutter, that you actually can do things. Because when you've reached that very, very low point, and I was extremely low, I remember being, crouched on the floor one evening, literally just sobbing. The boys had gone to bed, and just thinking, "Is this it? Can I even carry on doing this?" And the beauty of energy work is it really does take you through to something so much bigger than you. So much bigger than you. So I then went in to do my Master NLP certification. So I did my Master NLP and then discovered tapping on the internet. It was actually Donna Eden, so it was the energy medicine, and I was looking at doing that and realized actually that's really quite expensive. It really is quite an expensive course to do. And I just didn't have the funds. I was a single mum with 3 boys, and it was just an impossibility to fund something like that. Every single penny that I was using was literally soaked up in existing. So I looked and spoke to somebody in Manchester who was qualified in energy medicine, and I said, do you know of anything else that I could do? So she suggested you. So I looked you up, and here we are today. After I did my EFT, level 1 and advanced with you, and then MBIR with you, that again took me on a whole new journey of discovery, because I sort of realized that I'm not what people would call a normal person. I like to explore, as you know. And I ask a lot of questions, and I'm a person that needs to experience things to understand it and take it as my own. I can't just take somebody else's word for it, no matter what that is. And I discovered that actually is a real big ADHD trait. And as I looked into ADHD, I realized I ticked every single box. With a great
Which comes beautifully, beautifully, Rachel, to our topic today, which is age. I mean, I've known you a long time, and I know your mind can go in many different directions, and you really do research things deeply. I know this to be you. You're a very curious person. But so you're saying how did you therefore come to doing work and working with ADHD?
Well, as most things happen when you're doing work with energy work, you seem to attract those people to you. So I was getting quite a few families of children who were somewhere on the spectrum. And as that was happening, I realized that EFT is absolutely fantastic, and it was giving me the tools to explain even how Reiki worked and how NLP worked and how hypnosis worked. And it gave me all these tools to sort of explain it. But as I was explaining it verbally, I realized that people needed something physically to look at. So I started to put together my own little chart in a way that could help people understand where these emotions and feelings actually start from, and develop these little charts behind me, which is tap around the clock. So basically I took each tapping point and researched into the background behind each point as to, well, okay, so Gary Craig very kindly gave us EFT and told us that we don't need to know why it works. It just works, and it does in the most incredible way. But why does it work? Why am I tapping on my face and feeling stupid? Because these are the questions that people were asking me. And I think people who do have ADHD or on the spectrum, they actually need a really big picture to look at. They don't like things that are really, in a way, confined, because they are feeling so much. They are multidimensional in so many ways that we need to be able to understand, well, what that experience means, and what does that connect to, and what is this, and why is that, and how does that feel, and why am I feeling this here? And as I put all these charts together, I initially started with the clock, which was the Chinese meridian clock, because I discovered that the Chinese meridian clock actually gave optimum and minimum times for when some of these tapping points worked. So this one here, your stomach meridian, is optimum time is between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. But its weakest time is between 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. So the opposite times are the weakest of which makes sense. So as I started to just explain to people, okay, so this is sort of at its optimum time, or your lung meridian, which is your thumb here, which comes down here, is at its optimum time between 3 and 5 a.m. Now, for someone like me who has woken up nightly between 3 and 5 a.m. to go to the loo, made sense that my bladder meridian was then at its weakest. So I could explain not only that, that emotions were then attached to these meridians. This is probably where they started initially, but also there were physical symptoms behind each meridian. And as I put these charts together, one with sort of negative emotions, one with physical symptoms, and then there's another one over there with positive, it's like this spiral, this circle that you can go from negative to physical to positive and complete a cycle of emotion, so that you'll not just keep going round and round and round with something like disgust. You're completing that cycle. You're understanding what it feels like in your body, and you're understanding what it feels like when you connect with the positive. But to give someone these charts and then just leave them to say, okay, is there anything in there that resonates with you that you can correspond and say, yes, in this meridian here, I feel despair, I feel lost.
So again, just in case people are not clear what meridian, it's an energy channel.
Yes. Yeah. So meridians are a little bit like invisible guitar strings that run through your body, and they might start in your fingers and go all the way through down to your toes, but on the way through they'll pass through a main organ. So they've been given a title such as the stomach meridian, because if you tap here, believe it or not, this is where your stomach meridian is, and it will also pass through your stomach and out through your feet.
I just clarify, because there'll be some people who will be just listening to this. So you were just tapping under your eye, the edge of the eye socket there.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tapping under the eye, and it takes you on this really wonderful journey. And as I was putting all these charts together, I realized, well, this is a great mindfulness visual tool for people to connect with. And that's how Tap Around the Clock started. But the more work I did with this version, we started to perhaps tap at an optimum time. So if a client came to me between 3 and 5 in the afternoon, would say, okay, we're going to start tapping at this optimum time on the bladder meridian, and we're going to complete a cycle all the way around the clock, so that you have worked on 12 points at a cellular level in your body, and you can leave here knowing you've done that work and they feel this sense of power and, you know, accomplishment of actually, yeah, I've really achieved something, but also I can feel it. Understand how that actually feels. But once they make the connection of actually, gosh, I have just worked on 12 different parts of my internals, I can do something really positive to help myself. People like that knowledge. They like that empowerment of actually knowing what they're doing at this, you know, cellular atomic level. And then when we start to put the science behind it, because this journey has taken me on a real scientific journey, and she's very funny because I was really rubbish at science. So, but now I have this absolute passion for quantum physics, for epigenetics, for finding out about people like Bruce Lipton, Robert Jean and Brenda Dunn from Princeton University, who, you know, did a lot of research on the power of intention and how that actually affects the physicalities of machinery, of actually, can you, you know, send something over to the right? Can you send something over to the left with the power of intention? Now, using these charts and using the power of intention to work on one particular emotion with one particular meridian to go through that part of your body is extremely powerful. It takes you on a whole journey of going all the way through your ancestral lineage and through your DNA.
So you've looked obviously incredibly deeply at this, Rachel, and pulling it right back to ADHD and the type of people who you work with. I know you work a little bit in a family environment, but so what are the main people what are the main issues that people are bringing to you linked to ADHD?
Well, a lot of it are very burnout symptoms. You know, most people really, whether you're ADHD or not, most people are suffering from burnout type symptoms. So I have a chart of where there are 35 symptoms for people to complete as to how frequently they have them and what is the severity of having them. Because it's really important from my perspective that if somebody comes to me on the spectrum, that they are treated just like anybody else. Because there's nothing worse than somebody coming and being treated as if they are different. Now, sometimes they might want to be treated as different because they haven't yet had a diagnosis. So they want to know that there is something that they can cling on to that is making sense to them. But as we go through these symptoms and we tick off the frequency of how often they're having them and the severity of what they're having, and we work through the process, they begin to realize that they're able to self-soothe. So they learn how to self-soothe with me initially, and I help that process using the TARC tools. And as they learn their own process of being able to self-soothe, and that basically means, you know, they might go 10 minutes going off doing something else, they come back and do a 3-minute video, or they do three minutes worth of tapping, and it brings them back to self. But then they know it's actually working on a bigger part of their body. So if they're working on perhaps their stomach meridian, they know that's having a ripple effect onto the rest of their body because they feel it.
Well, pulling that back a little bit, then what you're looking at is doing a very extensive kind of symptom chart at the beginning, and which of course allows a person to follow their progress very precisely. You know, because I always think you lose people. People have got to have what we call convincers, haven't they? You know, something
absolutely.
that proves it.
Absolutely. And because people are coming with so many different symptoms, and this, you know, from a parent's point of view, from adults who have ADHD, you know, there are so many different things that we struggle with. We struggle with time. We struggle with being on time. We struggle anything to do with time and deadlines.
I'm going to have to stop you, Rachel. You've diagnosed me with ADHD.
But, you know, but then when we look at it from an energy therapy point of view, you know, and we look then into the latest research that is out, you know, science is proving in a way that time really doesn't really exist. We've been given time, man-made time, so that we can function on a day-to-day level to get things done. Now, this is really interesting because one of the big people in the States, Russell Barkley, who has studied ADHD for a very, very long time, calls this an economic deficiency, not an attention deficiency.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you think about those words, oh gosh, they are so precise,
Mm-hmm.
because there are so many people who either have not been diagnosed with ADHD, but have many ADHD type symptoms, who are unable to financially manage their lives, or are unable to self-regulate in relationships, or unable to sort out their own health effectively, because time runs away with them. So they'll get wrapped up in Netflix because that becomes their focus, and that becomes really important. I mean, I can see a whole family trait here, just in my own family of, one of my sons at the moment has discovered chess online, and he's obsessed. He's literally obsessed. To try and get him away from chess, he's now decided he's going to be a chess champion. We only discovered it 2 weeks ago, so it's quite amusing. But, it's something that he's really, really passionate about. And when we become really hyper involved in being passionate about something, we want to go and discover more and more about it. Now, we can take that as a problem, or we can take that as absolutely fantastic. We've found something to be passionate about. Let's go and see where this takes us, because this is where TARC EFT has taken me on this journey of this. Okay, I need to know more. Where is this going to take me? Now, it's evolving over time, and I'm learning about it as I go on. But what a beautiful journey this has taken me on. But the economic deficiency of that means that maybe I haven't promoted it as I could have done, because I'm still investigating on what it all means myself. And that's probably been part of my journey, along the way, because as you're doing that research, you want to know how effective it is and why it's effective. So getting all the statistics and things that we're putting together at the moment is the proof of the pudding, in a way, of what actually works. So from an economic point of view, the value of actually being put that out into society at the moment hasn't been absolutely huge, because there's a research side that is actually happening against all of that.
Oh, absolutely. Anything, because I mean, as you know, I created my own technique, mindfulness-based inner repatterning, which you have actually trained in.
And it is fantastic. I must say, to use EFT, MBIR, and TARC together, literally, it blows everything else out of the water. The combination of those three is absolutely phenomenal.
And I totally get what you're saying, that, whenever you develop something, you can't just be thinking, oh, yeah, it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. You've got to do that research.
Yeah.
You've got to check out things. You've got to make sure that what you're saying is correct, and there's validation of that. I totally go with that. And there can be that excitement of discovery, yeah. But pulling that right back, yeah, to ADHD as well.
See how convincing I am to get you off track.
I know. No, it's just that's one of the symptoms of that. But what are the others on your chart? What are the things that you paying attention to monitor the progress as you work with people?
Well, I very cheekily took from the government website during lockdown all the long-term COVID symptoms. And as I looked on their chart and realised how many they were and how many related to the actual energy work that we do, I just lifted them all off and incorporated a lot of those into the normal chart work that I do. So we've got muscle fatigue, we've got insomnia, we've got headaches, we have got loss of smell and taste. We've got, there's 35, I can't remember them all. But there is an awful lot of symptoms on there, some which are emotional and some which are physical. So we have dizziness, brain fog, and all of these things, people that mount up, and people don't realize, because they come with one specific problem, and it could be time management, or it could be anger, it could be that, with ADHD, there can be that real fuel up of frustration that goes whoosh into anger straight away, because things aren't happening how you want them to happen, and you don't know why, and you've got the information, but you don't know how to facilitate it into an action that makes sense. That is the difference. You know, you can't get that doing into that frontal lobe of processing it and actioning all the information that you've got. So by working through the charts that we've got, and sometimes it's slow and sometimes it's within one session, but usually within 3 sessions there's a massive significant difference. So from somebody having 21 symptoms, which isn't an average, I'm finding, of people coming to me, they'll have at least 21 symptoms, and I consider 5 symptoms to be going into a burnout stage. So whatever anybody comes to me with, I go from this from a burnout perspective rather than anything else perspective. Because once we can start to self-regulate some of these symptoms that come in and people know what to do with each of these symptoms, then they're able to self-regulate on a more precise level, something like the headache. Okay, so I'm getting a headache again. Why am I getting this headache? It's happening because I'm stressed. I've just been doing this. What if I try this technique? And it's bringing it back to self straight away. But it's what TARC actually teaches is consistency.
Yeah.
Because it's broken down into minute little segments over a period of 12 weeks. And basically, as we do that process of consistency, so every day there's a video there for someone to do, and you just do that one video. But the important thing is that you must complete the week's videos to get through to the positive at the end. Because a lot of people will want to be it's that ADHD trait of, okay, I'm so intrigued about this worry that I've got and it's making me feel like this, and I know I've not cleared it all right now. I'm so intrigued by it, I need to investigate it deeper. But what we're actually training people to do is say, okay, so you've got that worry. You know where it is now in your body, and you know what it feels like in your head or your mind. And we're now going to shift that through into a positive. And as we're training people to actually do that, but as they are continuing with their daily life. So they're literally continuing with their daily life, and they're doing 5 to 10 minute videos each day for 5 days.
I'll pull that back a little bit, because they're doing 10-minute videos, I think, or 5-minute videos. Yeah. They're watching them. Yeah, they're not creating them.
Oh no, they're not creating them. So I've created these. Yeah. There's different ways of doing it. Obviously, you know, you can do group work with me, either face to face or online, or there's an online course where you can literally just sit and the whole family can do this together. Literally, that's the beauty of it. Encouraging the family to work together and have these skills as a family. And then it's not just falling down onto one person who has a problem, because the whole family has an issue. The whole family has an economic deficiency of being able to function at a level where they're able to keep moving forward, because they're being held back by these emotions, by these behaviors, by these tools that keep happening in this cycle. So as we're training people to complete each cycle of emotion, we meet up then every Sunday to discuss what's happened during the week. But the beauty of it, because it's a community and everybody's voicing their area of development. Now, it might be that the first 3 weeks, somebody has nothing changes at all. Nothing changes at all, because they're not quite feeling it yet. But they're listening to everybody else's part of the journey, and they can see how much people are changing. They can hear it. And then come week 4, boom, something will happen with them. And they go, oh, wow. I understand what this feels like now. I understand what they were talking about. This makes sense. Now,
I'll hold you for a second there. There is going to be a buzzer that goes through the house in a moment. I'll let him do that, hopefully. He's doing it silently. I'll edit this. Where was I going to go with that, just in case he doesn't press it? So what I'd look at there is, for one thing, I just wanted to point out what a diagnosis is to people who are not familiar with what a diagnosis is, just to clarify something you said earlier on. Diagnosis is really the symptoms you have. So when you go to a doctor, he looks at the symptoms you have and he says, well, these symptoms, we call this ADHD. Yeah. And you're using their list of the symptoms to help you. Beautiful. Yeah. And
And it makes sense, it's I didn't realize until this week, actually, there is a 48-month waiting list for people to just go and see somebody about getting assessed. That's 4 years.
Yeah. Oh, I pull that back then. There's a really important point here to put there, Rachel. Just getting a diagnosis does not sort your problem. Yeah.
No.
All you do then is you can maybe tick a box and say, I have this problem. Yeah. But what you're effectively doing is you're saying, all right, what symptoms do you have? Yeah. You're getting kind of their own self-evaluation of those symptoms. And then you're methodically getting them to work on it. So they're understanding what they're doing. And then you're bringing them together, the people who are working with you in group. Which, there's something very beautiful that happens with group, isn't there? There is that supportive aspect to that, and the connection, because one of the beautiful things is, a lot of clients come to me and they say, and I say, well, loads of people have this. And they go, oh, what a relief. Thought I was the only one in the world. And not that I wish bad on other people, but so some pleasure I'm getting from that thought that I'm not the one. And that's what your group thing is doing here, isn't it? They're hearing other people talk in such a genuine way about what's happening for them. Then it becomes very supportive and normalizing the fact that we do have these issues going on, that we are currently in this particular place in our lives with these particular ways of being, normalizing that. And then they're all working towards a solution, which I would say that solution is balance, isn't it, really?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So very, and the fact you've got this very beautifully methodical approach, so they know exactly what they should be doing, when they should be doing it, really makes it a lot easier for certain people with certain ways of thinking. Because typically when you're talking about someone with ADHD, their mind's going to go here, there, right across the road, the other side.
Well, you know what? And the beauty behind it, Tanya, is that also that doesn't matter if that happens whilst they're using this method, because it's a circular system.
Yeah.
They can literally go off in a way at a tangent, because to say to someone who has ADHD traits, okay, we're just going to start this week on the stomach meridian, and they've got all that information on all the other meridians. Okay, we're just going to start with video 1. They're going to go, oh, there's all these other videos. I need to look at all these others. I'm going to look at them now. I need to do this, and I need to do that. So it's a matter of, that information is there for you to go and use. So go and use it. But what we are going to do as a group is work on that stomach meridian this week. So even though at 3 o'clock in the morning, you might have gone off and be working on the lung meridian and finding out what happens there and how you can self-soothe with that. Fantastic. Go and explore it. This is all about you, because all you're ever going to discover through doing this process is more information about you. And then you will learn that you are the most important creature on this planet, because whenever you discover information about you, it always take you on an interconnected journey with other people, because you begin to realize that it's not just you. Other people have those traits. Other people do those things. Other people wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and, they are doing tap around the clock, because there's an app as well now, that people can use to just download it. It's not even connected. Once you've downloaded it, it's not connected to the internet. It's on your phone for good. So it's not something that you are then using, all the EFGs, etc. It's all literally just on your phone, and you can use it. And the beauty of this is you can use it in the middle of the night. You can use it on a plane. You can use it wherever you are, and have that benefit of knowing there is a self-soothing tool that you can literally go around the clock knowing that you are self-soothing 12 areas of your internals. And that makes a huge difference.
Just such a beautiful structure to that, Rachel. And like you say there, you've got a lovely way of delivering it that is so supportive. And with that being said, what do you find is the most common symptom people may bring who are saying, who come to you with this problem?
Anxiety, I would imagine, and that sense of what is wrong with me. I can't get anything done.
Yeah.
I'm a failure.
Yeah, and there you're showing the impact of having this way of being, these particular symptoms on the whole self-esteem, aren't you, really?
Yeah.
You know.
Most people who have ADHD traits are extremely creative people,
Mm,
but they do not know what to do with it.
yeah. And that
There
beauty
are
is,
some really beautiful
mm,
ways of learning what to do with it, but just in different time scales,
mm,
what everybody else thinks you need to do with it. And that's another thing that, because it started off as tap around the clock, and we shortened it to TARC. Now it's become the ARC, because I've realized that we are the ARC, and the only mode of transport that we need is to get on our own ARC. And then we can literally time travel through our ancestral emotions and clear literally a whole stream of baggage, literally through just our mother's line. Now, when you take people on that type of journey and they realize it's not just them and there's something much bigger to look at, things become timeless.
mm.
So it's an extremely powerful, beautiful journey. Yeah, it's magical.
I
It's
will as
supposed to
one
read
last
it.
thing, just pull you back, because you mentioned we go down our mother's arc, maybe, uh, because just in case people are not familiar with that concept, yeah.
Mm.
Um, so just explain that a little bit more. You have someone who's having these current symptoms now at this moment in their life, and what you said there is we go down the mother's arc. So just explain how those two things relate.
Okay, so science is now proving that our DNA can be changed by our environment. And depending on what type of environment we are in,
Mm,
that DNA passes obviously down through from mother to child through the generations. Now, if there is no interruption of that environment, if we do this just from an emotional perspective, so say there's been a whole, I'll give you an example. I'll make it personal. So my mother was adopted, and obviously that wrench of being adopted and of finding out when you are sort of 16 that you're adopted, and the loss of
mm,
that whole journey of loss, and then her biological mother, her sense of loss of having to give the child up that she didn't want to give up, but because of the circumstances of the age and the time, she was really forced to give her up. So the loss that has gone on from just those two generations has literally gone through the DNA in my mother's eggs through to me. So I've always had this sense of huge loss that I could never understand,
mm,
and responsibility towards my mother. And as you start to work through using these tools, it takes you down like a thread. So it's like having this thread of just emotion that connects from me to my mum, to my grandmother, to however far we need to go down. And as we follow that thread of emotion, we realize it's not just me that suffers loss. I've had a lot of loss physically in my life, but then so has my mother, and so has my grandmother. And as you make the resonant connection, and this is all about resonating and making a resonant connection with all of that, you start to release, because we bring in the positives. Okay, so there's been that resonance of loss, and it's gone all the way down this family line, but we're now putting me into a different environment that is love filled, and we're completing that cycle of emotion, which helps to complete that cycle of emotion all the way down that line as far as we wish to go. Now, that's really deep and profound and a bit off the scale for some people to understand. But if you look at Dr. Peter Stapleton's work, who is a scientist who is, and this is from the EFT, the emotional freedom, the tapping perspective, she's actually proving that actually the environment that you find yourself in and using EFT actually helps to make changes in your DNA at a cellular level.
mm.
Now, it's not just Peter Stapleton who has these findings. You can look up Dr. Bruce Lipton, who is an epigenetics researcher, and he's done, nearly 30 years worth of research of how the DNA and the environment actually really does start to change your DNA when you start to work at a cellular level with physical symptoms, emotions, your thoughts. It's quite profound.
Oh, very profound for some people, but I love it because, as Bruce Lipton says, you're not the victim.
Mm.
You can create. Yeah, I say can because you have to know that you can create before you can. Otherwise, you're almost like doomed to repeat the past, and you got these inherited programs that can keep running within you, and yet you have the potential to just shift this. And as you say, your work goes very deep, shifting these ancestral patterns that we have playing out within us. And I just love Bruce Lipton's work anyway, for the fact is it's a very positive message, but very positive that you don't have to be the victim of what you inherit. You can change things in such a fabulous way, because the human body is amazing.
Oh, I do. And I think we get it very carried away with the stories. We all like a good story. There's nothing better than a good story. We do love a good story, and we can get caught up in that story, and we always want to know the next part of the story. But actually, our healing journey doesn't need the story. It just needs the connection of the emotion. If you think of a song that will literally take you back to that time where your first love or your first dance, and every time that song comes on, it is literally as if you've gone back in time with that person. You're there in that room. So it becomes timeless. That emotion takes you literally immediately to that time. And that's really what energy work does. It takes you immediately to a resonant time that feels like it's happening right now, because your thoughts or the pictures or the sounds or the feelings in your body are so present, you can experience it. And then when you've experienced it, you're resonating with it, that's when we are able to shift it into something even more beautiful as part of that healing process, rather than just repeating that cycle of loss and loss and loss. Actually, that loss was because someone loved you so much, they were able to do that for you. And when we resonate to that love aspect, that's when you experience that shift. And the experience of that shift is deeply, deeply profound. And that's why words on paper or just listening to me talk about this literally is not going to be your experience. It is something that you have to put yourself on a journey and choose to do.
I'm going to pull this interview to a close there, Rachel, because I know you're a very busy lady. However, how can people catch up? By the way, I just think as well that was such a beautiful note also to finish on. It would be a shame if I went past the point of love and that deep change within people. So I am going to finish at that point. It's a very beautiful note to finish on. So Rachel, how can people find you and connect with you about your work?
Okay, so I'm quite on social media. So if you put in Rachel Earing, and that's Earing with one R, EARING, you can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, or you can go onto my website, which is www.live4energy, and that's LIV with a number 4 in the middle, live4energy.co.uk.
Thank you very much, Rachel, for explaining this in such a beautiful way. And absolutely fabulous. So you have a beautiful day, and I say thank you very much, Rachel.
You too. Thank you, Tania. Take care.